Welcome everyone to a CEFTUS event tonight on Turkey-Greece relationship and the USA. My name is Zeynep. I am a lecturer in the Department of Social and Policy Studies at the University of Bath, and I am feel very lucky to have such great speakers tonight with us. We will talk about Greece and Turkey relations, as I mentioned. I will briefly introduce our speakers, and then our speakers will talk for about 10 minutes each, and then we will move on to the question and answers. And before I start, I was informed by CEFTUS that there's going to be a screenshot, a family photo at the end of the event. If you would like to take part in that, keep your cameras on. If you don't want to, please turn off your cameras. So that's the housekeeping rule. Apart from that, the housekeeping rules are so little when it comes to online events, so it makes our job very easy. I'm delighted to welcome all of you, and I am also delighted to welcome our speakers, İlke, Toygur, Çağaptay, and Nicholas Danforth. Just a quick note about CEFTUS. Center for Turkey Studies. It's an independent and non-partisan civil society organization that aims to build bridges between the UK and Turkey and the region. And it organizes forums like this, promoting opinions of the experts, debates focusing on Turkey-UK relations, foreign affairs, economic issues, and so on and so forth. I will, as I said, briefly introduce the speakers, and then we will start the event with Soner's talk. Dr. Soner Çağaptay is the Bayer Family Fellow and Director of the Turkish Research Program at the Washington Institute. He has written extensively on US-Turkish relations, Turkish domestic politics, Turkish nationalism, publishing in scholarly journals, as well as a major international print media. I'm sure you probably all know him already. Our second speaker is going to be İlke, Dr. İlke Toygur. İlke is Analyst of European Affairs at Elcano Royal Institute and Katz Fellow in German Institute for International and Security Studies. Her main research areas include European integration, EU institutions, political parties, and elections in Western Europe, EU's foreign policy, transatlantic relations, and Turkish politics. And Dr. Nick Danforth, he is a non-resident senior fellow at the Hellenic Foundation for European and Foreign Policy and a visiting scholar at the George Washington University's Elliott School of International Affairs. He's author of the forthcoming book, The Remaking of Republican Turkey, Memory and Modernity Since the Fall of the Ottoman Empire. I'm personally looking forward to it. He has written widely about Turkey, US foreign policy, and the Middle East for publications, including the Atlantic Foreign Affairs and many others. So as you can see, we have a great group of speakers today, very esteemed scholars, experts in their fields, and I think it's going to be a great event, a very productive discussion, hopefully afterwards. I will stop here and I will hand it over to Soner to share with us his thoughts. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Zeynep, for your kind words of introduction. I also want to thank CEFTUS for organizing today's conversation. A couple of us are on this side of the ocean. Nick and I are here. I'm very delighted to be on the same panel with Nick and, of course, with İlke, who's joining from Madrid. So today's conversation looks at the new environment in the Eastern Med. And what I thought I would do is speak very briefly so there's time for questions. I'm very excited to be on this panel. I look forward to learning from it. I will present to you, I'm not defending either of these positions, obviously, the Turkish view of how East Med looks, and also the US view of how East Med looks. And I'm sure Nick and İlke will add to what I have to say. So very briefly, I think the Turkish view of Eastern Mediterranean is that as a result of Turkey's policies in the last decade, since the beginning of Arab uprisings, Turkey feels itself being completely isolated in the Eastern Med. We can discuss why it ended up there. I think it's another debate on Erdogan's Arab uprisings politics. But in a nutshell, Turkey today has almost no friends around the Eastern Mediterranean, completely isolated. It's lost its old friend Israel. It's Also, ties with Egypt have been ruptured since the military takeover by General Sisi. And on top of it, of course, Turkey's ties with Syria. I don't have to explain to you why Erdogan and Assad don't get along well. And add to this old and unfortunately adversarial ties with Greece and Cyprus, you get a security environment in Eastern Mediterranean where Turkey has nearly no friends. There's one country I haven't named, that's Libya. That's why I think you can't discuss how Turkey views Eastern Med without discussing Libya. And Libya's civil war, therefore, makes it really important for Turkey because Ankara sees itself as being blocked in by its old and new adversaries and sees a win in Libya as the only way it can pierce this block of countries that is boxing Turkey in the Eastern Mediterranean. The strategic environment, the way it looks, is not a day goes by that Greece and Cyprus, joined by Egypt and Israel, launch a new initiative, and always excluding Turkey. And I think that only adds to Turkey's sense of isolation. Whether these initiatives are energy related or natural gas related or security, there's one rule: Turkey is usually not invited, or if it's invited, it doesn't want to be at the table. And so what Turkey has done, I think it is decided to go after what it considers to be the weakest link in this constellation of 4 countries, including Greece, Cyprus, Egypt, and Israel, to undermine this axis from coalescing. And the weakest link is Cyprus. And Turkey and Greek Cypriots, of course, don't recognize each other. So that provides especially fertile grounds for confrontational policies. Of course, at the same time, I think you should add to this the fact that Turkey's own sense of encirclement along the seas, including the Aegean and the Mediterranean, is heightened by Greece's demands for rather large exclusive economic zones, which limit Turkey's access not just to the Aegean Sea, but also now to the Mediterranean. So
Soner, I cannot hear you. I don't know if it's only me.
I was writing on the chat box as well. Can everyone hear him? There is no sound.
in terms of delineating,
Soner, we couldn't hear you for about 45 seconds or so.
okay, so let me rewind. Can you hear me and see me now?
Yes, thank you.
All right, so let me try to rewind. Hopefully I'll catch where sound was cut off. So I was basically suggesting that Turkey's historic perception that it's being boxed in along the seas that encircle the country by Greece across the Aegean Sea has now been heightened because of Greece's rather expansionist demands for large exclusive economic zones, discounting Turkey's own maritime zones, has heightened Turkey's sense that it's not only being boxed in the Aegean, but it's also now being boxed in the Mediterranean. So what Turkey has decided to do is it's going after the weakest link in this 4-country constellation that Ankara sees encircling Turkey in, and that's Cyprus. But also Turkey tried to steal Egypt from this constellation. It didn't really work out. I think Egyptians are very happy with their alliance with the Greeks. And so there's only one way for Turkey, as Ankara sees it, to break this isolation, and it is to win the war in Libya. Because as Turks see it, the exclusive economic zone that Turkey claims, also quite a large and expansionist one, that would allow Turkey to become maritime neighbors with Libya if the civil war in Libya is won by the pro-Turkey government, which is also the internationally recognized government in Tripoli. If you can kind of imagine a map of Eastern Mediterranean, if you think of a northwest southeast axis running from Greece, Cyprus, Egypt to Israel, Turkey wants to break this axis by its own northeast southwest axis running from Turkey to Libya. So it's very important for the war in Libya to end in a way that's favorable to Turkey. How does that view from Washington? I think the view from Washington is that for reasons not necessarily related to the strategic environment in Eastern Mediterranean, the United States is pivoting from Turkey to Greece very slowly. I was thinking of an analogy. I know people are joining us from Turkey and I'm from points nearby. I feel like most people can relate to this. Imagine you're watching an oil tanker make a turn along the Bosphorus. You know, you start having your tea, the tanker is turning, let's say around Istinia. You watch it, you're done with your tea, 30 minutes later, the tanker still hasn't turned, but it's turning, you see it. That's the US pivot from Turkey to Greece. The pivot has started, it's not complete, it takes a very long time, but now the US sees Greece as the building block of security architecture in the Eastern Med instead of Turkey. I wouldn't say Greece has completely substituted Turkey, but I think the process is in place. So as a result of that, of course, United States is also not very favorable towards supporting and embracing the Turkish position. One area, though, where I think President Biden will make a difference is he's going to try to de-link Libya and Eastern Med, because to the extent that these two issues are linked, you know, it makes it more and more difficult for a political solution to be found in either of these places. So I can see President Biden putting an emphasis on finding a solution to the civil war in Libya that could decrease some of the Greek-Turkish tensions. I should add that Greece, of course, supports, politically at least, the forces of General Haftar, opposing the internationally recognized government there in Tripoli, which is backed by Turkey. So I think that could be an area of deconflicting, hopefully. But so long as Turkey's sense of isolation is in place, I don't think that we're going to see, unfortunately, a quick de-escalation of tensions in the Eastern Med. Let me end here. I know there's a lot of points I could come back to, but I also want to hear from Nick and İlke and learn from them as well.
Thank you, Soner. That was brilliant.
Of course.
And despite the loss of time, you kept your time. So
excellent.
Amazing work. I'm expecting the same from the other speakers as well. Okay, İlke, over to you, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zeynep. I will do my best to do the same as Soner did. And thank you also to colleagues in CEFTUS for inviting us. I will try to bring the EU's perspective into all this debate and also comment on the Biden administration's role in general for transatlantic relations and on Turkey-EU relations in particular. I think I will start by stating the obvious in Turkish-Greek relations. The clash of interests over Cyprus lie at the heart. Since 1999 Helsinki summit, where Turkey was given the candidacy status and also the Republic of Cyprus was given the green light to become an EU member without resolving its territorial dispute, there has been no incentive to resolve this issue for both sides. There were many attempts. And since both Greece and Republic of Cyprus are EU member states and Turkey is a candidate country for accession, there's this power asymmetry when it comes to the EU. And due to the principle of solidarity, the EU is expected to become a part in the conflict whenever there are tensions between Turkey and Greece. So this is always there. This is a starting point. Having said that, I think there are also two very important items on the agenda that made Turkey-Greek relations also a very important component of Turkey-EU relations as such. The first one is the issue of management of irregular migration. Next week we will celebrate, if it's something to celebrate, the 50-year anniversary of Turkey-EU statement on refugees. This is the first issue, and the second one is tensions in the Eastern Mediterranean due to, well, historic rivalry, but also due to recent hydrocarbon discoveries in the region. Both these items changed Turkey-EU relations for good. So these issues on the bilateral agenda have their repercussions for Turkey-EU relations. I don't want to get so much into that, but I need to underline that the first item, the management of irregular migration, made Turkey-EU relations even more transactional with this statement on refugees, and the tensions and the management of the tensions in the Eastern Mediterranean recently in 2020 brought the issue of foreign policy as the most important item on the agenda. European Council conclusions from October and December once again demonstrated the importance of foreign policy, at least for the leaders, even if it's not the case for all the institutions. I can get back to that if there are more questions on that regard. So every time there's a bilateral problem between Turkey and Greece, this has a reflection for the EU, and this has a reflection for Turkey-EU relations. This is the first point I wanted to make. The second one is, I think the tensions between Greece and Turkey, even if it's an asymmetric relationship, has been playing to foreign policy agendas of both countries. It is clear that Turkey is the most important item on the Greek foreign policy agenda. This has always been, this is historical. I'm sure Nick will speak more about the historical importance of this, but both countries use same kind of arguments to underline their importance. I think it's interesting to point out. No? The historic ties to Western civilization, geographic location, being an integral part of Europe, and also even being the European shields during the migration crisis, they are both using the similar arguments to locate or relocate themselves as important points of important actors for Europe itself. And even if right now Greece has been the winner of the weakening of Turkey's ties with everyone in the region, be it the United States, be it like related to the region, be it the United States, Israel, etc. I think the same argumentation has always been, they have always been valid and both Turkey's and Greece's agenda. And this kind of connects me, without extending so much, to the possible impact of Biden administration. For me, I think the EU's hand is strengthened now that the Biden is in the White House when it comes to the tensions in the Eastern Mediterranean. The United States is putting pressure on Turkey in general, and when it comes to its relations with Cyprus and Greece in particular, traditionally it had a more balancing approach, but as already Soner stated, the pivot has started towards Greece, and I think United States has been showing this clearly very lately. I think Biden also has a very long-standing interest in the Cyprus issue and Turkey's attempts to change the status quo there. For example, we are encouraging the opening of the sealed off beachfront of Varosha, and the suggestion of two-state solution, etc., are not necessarily welcomed. I think these are also very core reasons behind the perceived pivot. But I would like to, I think, state 4 points on the question why Greece has been important for the US, because I think the issues with Turkey or the current state of affairs between the US and Turkey is just one side of the issue, or one aspect of the pivot towards Greece, if we can call it a pivot. Clearly, the Greece could be perceived as a replacement of Turkey as the frontline state, and this is, I think, this is a dominant idea in the US, since the country is mostly thinking that they have done everything they could on Turkey, and there are not so many policy options left for making things better. This is clearly on the agenda. This is the first item. But the second one is, I think the US also cares about Greece because of its close ties to China. Greece has been perceived as nodal for the Belt and Road Initiative, and I think the US really cared about this, and since Greece was historically perceived as pro-Russian, pro-Chinese, I think this was a very important factor for the US administration as well. The third one for me, Greece also have issues with the European Union in general, Germany in particular, since the Eurozone crisis. I think it's important to put that on the table as well. And the rapprochement with the US helps the image of the country. This is mostly in favor of Greece rather than the United States, but I think it's, for Greece, it's a very important factor. The last one for me, and with this, I think I will be concluding as well, Biden knows the Eastern Mediterranean well. He cares about the region, and he increasingly sees Greece as an important actor that may stabilize the region, while other actors are not necessarily playing that role. I think this is very important for the US administration, also for Trump, but also for Biden administration. And with the increasing American presence in Alexandropoli, the Derach region, for example, this is a win-win situation for the Aegean, for Black Sea, for the Balkans. And I think even if we tend to, as analysts of Turkey and Turkey-EU, Turkey-US relations, even if we tend to perceive this rapprochement between Greece and the US from the Turkish perspective, I think it is important to situate that the great power rivalry with China and Russia for the US also play an important role with the rapprochement with Greece. I'm sure Nick will talk way more about that, but I think it's important to have all these dimensions when we are thinking about Greece, Turkey, and the US in a triangle. I think I will stop that there, and I will be very happy to come back to any of the points and more in question and answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, İlke. Again, perfectly on time and equally interesting talk. Thank you very much. And now we are moving on to our last speaker. Nick, please go ahead. And then I will open the floor for question and answers. Before Nick, sorry, just a quick note, please write your questions into the chat box and I will be asking them to the speakers. If you have a particular speaker in mind, please make a note of that as well in your question. And I forgot to mention at the beginning, our event is a 1-hour event. So we will aim to finish within an hour. But obviously, if the conversation continues, we might be able to be more flexible for extra 5 or 10 minutes. All right, I will stop there. Sorry for the interruption. And Nick, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Zeynep. Thank you to the organizers of this panel. Thank you to everyone who's joining us. I enjoy going last because everyone has pretty much covered all the main points. I will try to make my comments very brief. I have to start out by saying this is actually a little overwhelming. The first class on Turkish history and politics I ever took as an undergraduate, Soner was the professor. And the second class I ever took as a master's student at SOAS was with Gammon McClellan, who I just saw was in the audience. So I will try to live up to the high standards set by my teachers here. Let me begin, and again, I'm mostly going to emphasize what the previous speakers have said. I think the metaphor of this pivot towards Greece, this slow tanker-like pivot, is a very good one. But to flesh it out a little bit, I want to begin with a quote that Baran Kayolu is very fond of. He was the one who introduced me to it. This is from Dean Acheson in 1964. We spent 2 months in the worst rat race I have ever been in, trying to deny Greeks and Turks their historic recreation of killing one another. And this, I think this quote captures what's long been the United States' attitude towards Greek-Turkish issues, as well as many of the problematic assumptions and condescension that's often wrapped up in that. I think since 1952, the sense from US policymakers has been Greece and Turkey should just get over their issues so we can focus on whatever the bigger strategic issues, namely what Washington thinks are the bigger strategic issues, are. And in that, with that goal in mind, the United States has always tried to play the role of diffusing, ending, solving, making go away Greek-Turkish tensions. 1964, 1974, they've done this with various degrees of effectiveness and ineffectiveness, but this has always been the goal, to make this issue go away. I think that remains the goal, but what I think is changing, and this is where I very much agree with the previous two speakers, is the way Washington approaches this goal. And in the past, it was always, I think the sense was that we didn't particularly care who was right, who was on which side. We just wanted to solve the conflict, and we would promote negotiations and put pressure on both sides to the extent we could achieve that goal. What I think has changed, and you saw this beginning at the end of the Biden administration, you saw this definitely become more pronounced in the State Department under Pompeo, in the Trump administration, sometimes independent of what Trump was doing, And I think this is very much going to be the case in Biden. Is this newfound sense that keeping Greek-Turkish tensions from getting worse means containing Turkey. This new sense that the problem in the region is Turkey's provocative behavior, and that strengthening Greece, strengthening the other countries trying to rein Turkey in, rein Erdogan in, is the best way for the United States to ultimately deal with this problem. And I think that is going to very much shape the dynamic. But, you know, Greece has also played a very big role in facilitating this pivot. The Turkish government has been very eager to court successive US administrations. They've been very eager, you know, as fears about US access to Incirlik Air Base have increased. Greece has been very eager to encourage the United States to expand military facilities, Suda Bay and Crete being the most prominent example. And, you know, Greece, I think also this doesn't get talked about enough, solving the Macedonian name issue was a big thing. I think from the point of view of a lot of people in Washington, that was a NATO headache that people blamed Greece for. Greece finally finding a diplomatic solution to that. I think for people here, it kind of embodied what they see as the constructive attitude that they want their partners in the region to take, as opposed to what they see as the very non-constructive attitude Turkey is taking. There are also internal dynamics that are driving this. You know, as Sonia mentioned, Turkey does not have a lot of friends left in Washington. The Defense Department always used to defend Turkey when there was a lot of criticism coming from Congress in particular. The Defense Department isn't on Turkey's side. The Turkish government's paid a lot of attention to the fact that Brett McGurk now has a very senior role in the United States government. That is certainly true, but I think the bigger issue for Turkey is that Brett McGurk is by far not the only one in the government who feels, you know, deep sense of frustration bordering on hostility towards Turkey. And then combining these two, you have a regional dynamic, which again, as we discussed, you know, really has brought together almost all of America's partners and allies in the Eastern Mediterranean and Middle East against on the other side of Turkey. And that's going to make it very hard for any US administration to improve these relations, to take the role of a neutral arbitrator in these relations. You know, yes, Biden is going to be less enthusiastic about Saudi Arabia than the Trump administration was. He'll have a slightly less enthusiastic policy towards the Netanyahu government than Trump did. You know, but at the end of the day, if Turkey is at odds with Saudi Arabia, with Israel, with Greece, with Cyprus, with Egypt, that's any US administration for the foreseeable future is going to find that very difficult to deal with. And so, you know, now you see this dynamic where Turkey has realized this is a problem, has gone on a charm offensive where it constantly claims it's prepared to improve its relations with all of its neighbors. And yet, I wish I could remember that. There was a very good article in Gazete Duvar about this the other day. There is a credibility problem with these efforts. You know, Turkey continually puts out statements about how it's about to have a reset with Washington. It's about to have a reset with the EU. Most recently, Çavuşoğlu said they were negotiating, or they were on the verge of signing a maritime exclusive economic zone delimitation agreement with Egypt, which the Egyptian government very quickly said was not at all on their mind. You know, and so I think for the foreseeable future, you know, people are glad that there were, you know, there's talk of talks on Cyprus. People are glad that there were talk of talks between Turkey and Greece. If it was at the 64th round they just had of pre-talks. No one expects these to go anywhere. I think they still rather have inconclusive pro forma talks than, you know, escalation. But it's difficult for me to see this dynamic changing. So I'll close there and open to questions.
Thank you, Nick, for a great talk. Excellent, very great start to the discussion. And you guys covered so many important aspects in a huge area, and lots of policy issues. So and lots of dynamics from EU to the US and the countries around the Mediterranean, the historical context and future implications. So thank you all for that and all the great insights. I will move on to the questions. So I'm going to start from the first question here by Tozun Bahçeli. So his question, he hasn't identified a speaker, so any one of you would like to take it, please go ahead. What leverage, if any, does the US have in helping settle Greece and Turkey's maritime boundary disputes? I guess Soner might be...
I'll be happy to, absolutely. So I would say, kind of picking up where Nick left, and I'm equally flattered to be on the same panel with Nick. I think the US leverage is not that Washington thinks it can resolve all these issues between Turkey and Greece. It is just that it wants to prevent them from escalating from the level of political crisis into one of a military crisis. So that's why I think Washington supports the bilateral talks, which went on for a very long time, produced no results, but that's not the point. They prevented a near Greek-Turkish war, similar to what happened in 1990s over Emir Kardak. Ties were quite cordial and friendly for about 2 decades. So it's good that talks have resumed, and I think Washington's view is these talks should continue. I think Ankara, President Erdogan, that is, will embrace these talks, at least in the short term. I think this is all about a charm offensive Erdogan is currently trying to launch. I'm using the word charm offensive in quotes, if you can see my fingers. That's because Erdogan wants to cultivate European and international investment, and so create the sense that Turkish ties with Europe and US are not in free fall. It's one reason, I think, among others, why he has embraced talks. And Greece, for its own sake, I think wants to be in the talks to de-escalate tensions. And I think that's going to be the underlying theme of the Biden administration. The other leverage, I guess is not the right word, policy instrument, as I mentioned earlier, would be encouraging or delinking Libya, the war in Libya, from the conflicts in Eastern Med. And I can see the Biden administration working with its European partners to bring the civil war in Libya to an end, and that could help de-escalate Turkish-Greek tensions, at least those that are stemming from Libya.
Thank you, great. Thank you, Soner. We have 2 questions about the islands, specifically. One from Rachel Prager. The question is, how seriously should we take Erdogan's comments calling into question the Treaty of Lausanne, and as such the status of sensitive islands like Castelli-Rosio or Grey Zone Islands that are not specifically identified in various international agreements? And another question in relation to islands is by Nuri Kurnaz. Is Greece illegally militarizing the Mace Island? Who would like to take that question?
Nick, did you want to go, or?
Yeah, sure. I mean, anyone else? I'll throw in my 2 cents if, like, people really don't like irredentist rhetoric, whether it's coming from Turkish officials, whether it's coming from the Turkish government's tightly controlled pro-government media. You would think, and it's quite possibly the Turkish government does understand this as well as anyone else. We've seen a huge reaction to the KRG government recently printing a stamp in response to the Pope's visit, which supposedly showed an outline of Greater Kurdistan on the stamp. Given the reaction, this has created, the Turkish media publishing comments about how easy it would be to occupy Greek islands, how easy it would be to invade Salonika, alongside, in some cases, AKP parliamentarians, the Turkish vice president making veiled or not so veiled irredentist statements. Again, it's not that I think anyone expects the Turkish government to try to conquer these islands in the foreseeable future, but this rhetoric has very bad associations. It really worries people. It has created a considerable amount of alarm about Turkish intentions in Greece, and creates a great deal of sympathy for Turkey's position in Washington. I think it's also worth noting on the EEZ issue in particular. I think the Libya memorandum of understanding about the maritime claims, in which Turkey, in coordination with the GNA, completely disregarded the EEZ impact of Greek islands like Crete. This was also, I think, had a bigger impact than Ankara realizes. When it comes to the specific debate about Castello-Rizzo's EEZ, My sense is in Washington and elsewhere, there's a fair amount of sympathy for Turkey. No one, it's a small island. It's very far from the rest of the Greek islands. It's right next to Turkey. A lot of people are happy to say, yes, there should be some special agreement worked out. Greece shouldn't get the full, civil map EEZ from that island. But as soon as you have Turkey making these maximalist claims through the agreement with the GNA, that totally changes the conversation. And suddenly for people, it's not a dispute over, what the fair solution to Castellarizo's EEZ is. It's Turkey completely disregarding international law in a way that makes it very hard to convince anyone else in the United States, at least, that Turkey really is interested in a negotiated settlement or really would accept any kind of fair, internationally acceptable agreement on the EEZ issue. So yeah, sorry, that's my rant on that.
Great. Thank you, Nick. It was a nice rant. It was great. Thank you. We have a question on EU. I think, İlke, this is for you. Does Turkey actually have any genuine interest in joining the EU, as it seems to change its foreign policy on EU accession quite regularly? Or let's say it's fluid. So this is a question from Fevzi Hussein. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before answering that question, I think I would like to chip in also to the previous one with one dimension. I think all these talks about the Lausanne Treaty or the islands, etc., also should be taken as the Turkish government's desire to play foreign policies for domestic purposes. I think it is not just because they are in foreign policy, but they also sell quite well in Turkish society, at least for their electorate, and some claim even for more segments of the Turkish society. But I think this has a very important domestic dimension. And I strongly think this is also correct for Greece. In my initial remarks, I wanted to underline that both countries use the other for strengthening their nationalist basis in the country, and also use very similar arguments to convince the European Union and the US for claiming that they are the most important partner, way more than the other one. Coming back to the issue of the EU accession, I think the Turkey's EU accession is not on the table right now. It has not been on the table for a really long while, but I think Turkey has a desire of keeping things at least in an acceptable level with the EU, just because of if for nothing, just because of the economic interdependency. The EU is Turkey's biggest trade partner, and everything that happens on this front are very much harmful for Turkish economy. So even if the accession process is not necessarily alive right now, everything else on interdependency front, starting with the economy, migration management, fight against and intelligence sharing on terrorism and foreign fighters, etc., etc. There are so many issues on Turkey-EU agenda that makes it a very important partnership, both for Turkey, and I will also claim that also for the European Union.
Can I just quickly jump in, Zeynep, for Castellarizo also? Great. I just wanted to quickly come in and kind of elaborate a little bit on the Castellarizo issue. First of all, it's one of my favorite Greek islands, beautiful if you've never been visit. And it should qualify though, I'm a historian of the Balkans, and I know I have a number of Greek, both Turkish and other country followers on Twitter. And I recently put a picture of Athens, and I just love Athens. And there was a heart emoji, and someone said, "Hey, Turk, do you want it from us?" So when I say Castellarizo is a favorite Greek island, I mean it just in the context of it being so beautiful. But it's a tricky island because here both and Turkey have maximalist demands. Turkey says that Castellarizo has no exclusive economic zone of its own, and Greece basically says the Turkish coast near Castellarizo nearly has no exclusive economic zone of its own. Now, usually when islands of one country is very close to the coast of another country, nobody can get 100% of what they want. You have to have an equitable share. In this case, I think the two sides are embracing a more of a maximalist agenda. And I think this is because it used to be that Aegean issues were all about maritime disputes. Now, Mediterranean issues between Turkey and Greece are about maritime disputes, but also these disputes are now compounded or complicated by disputes over energy, sovereignty, regional power competition. So it becomes even more difficult than the Aegean issues to sift out who gets what around Castellariza. And because I know I'm looking at the screen, there's a bunch of visitors and audience from Greece and Turkey. I think the best answer in this case will be Nasreddin Hoca, who, as you know, is a medieval satirist. You know, they go to him and two people who can't agree on a topic. He says, "You are right, and you are right too." Or, you know, you could also say you're wrong and you're wrong too, whichever way you want to look at it. I think Castellariza has added another layer of complexity to Turkish-Greek disputes, but it's even less likely to be solved easily because unlike the Aegean disputes, it's no more about maritime challenges at this stage. It's also about energy, regional power competition, and sovereignty. And I think it has to do with US departure or exit from Eastern Med as a superpower starting in Libya. And when that happens, of course, everybody tries to kind of look after their best interests. And that's why I think the war in Libya got linked to Turkish-Greek disputes in Eastern Med. And it'd be great to de-link those two issues going forward.
Thank you, Soner. That's great. And thanks for reminding us Nasreddin Hoca's story.
Yeah, I knew that everybody on this call would get it. So that's why I thought I could use it.
It does. And I remember İlke started her talk with the clash of interests slide at the heart, which you referred to it as well. And then the whole, like, you know, love and hate relationship. Hoca has a lot of stories, you know, in relation to this. One of the things that I share a lot with my Greek friends as well. It seems like they know about Nasreddin Hoca and his stories as well. So there's a lot of great laughter there. Anyway, I was going to say something, but I'm just aware of the time and we have very little time. Want to say one more thing about Nasreddin Hoca, but I will stop and I will move on to the question. We have a question about the Mediterranean regional politics. And a question is, in Turkey, this is from Mohammed Al-Mirzan, this is referring to the question of Turkey hosting Syrians in its country, and also the connections with Muslim Brotherhood related to diaspora from many Arab states. So how such an initiative in Turkey influence the country's relationship with Arab states? Would Turkey give up its support to these opposing Arabs or limit their narrative for improving relation with Egypt? I guess the question is basically, how is Turkey navigating its relationships with other Arab states such as Egypt in the context of these complex relationships with the Muslim Brotherhood and Turkey's involvement in the Middle Eastern context and the conflicts there, plus the migration and displacement. So I guess maybe Nick or Soner or İlke, I think any one of you could answer this question. I'm going to leave it to you to decide who wants to go for it.
Maybe I'll jump in quickly and then Nick and İlke can follow up. Is that okay, guys? So I think, of course, we don't want to look at Turkey's policy in Arab countries. That's another discussion. Maybe we can have another time. But the way it links to Eastern Med is, if you ask me and you said, Soner, of the following leaders, A, Assad in Syria, against whom Erdogan led a military uprising, B, Netanyahu, against whom Erdogan has said horrible things, and Netanyahu has said horrible things against Erdogan in return, and C, Sisi, with which of these leaders is Erdogan least likely to make up? Surprise, the answer is not Assad or Netanyahu. I think it's Sisi, because Erdogan's support to Muslim Brotherhood, which Sisi considers to be the greatest threat to Egypt domestically and internationally, and also his regional allies, that the Sisi's regional allies, UAE and Saudis, have the same view, have kind of put Turkey and Egypt at opposing ends of a ideological spectrum in the Middle East. I think that Erdogan's policy of putting all of Turkey's political capital behind Muslim Brotherhood was ill-conceived. because if the Brotherhood had won in Egypt, Turkey would have won big. But because the Brotherhood lost, it lost everything. I think a more crafty politician would have supported different actors. And so you always end up winning, not as big, but at least not losing everything. But the outcome of it is that Turkey and Egypt today are quite confrontational. And this actually, I think, is one of the reasons why you have an axis of countries that are linking up, including Egypt, always excluding Turkey. If Turkey stopped supporting the Brotherhood, I think, yes, that would improve Turkish-Egyptian ties, but it's one of these areas where I think Erdogan doesn't seem to have a lot of willingness to maneuver. And when I saw news earlier last week that Turkey and Egypt were in secret talks, I wasn't really holding my breath, because I was saying that will only happen, meaning positive outcome of normalization of Turkish-Egyptian ties, if Turkey stops supporting a Muslim Brotherhood. I don't see any signs of that happening, but I'm sure Nick and İlke can also add to this.
No, I think that captures the dynamic well. I mean, it's a little frustrating. I haven't been able to travel for a year. It's harder to talk to people connected to the Turkish government now, so I don't claim to have any real understanding on their thinking, but it seems like there is undoubtedly an awareness in Ankara of what it would take to improve relations with Egypt, to improve relations with Israel, but it wouldn't require, it seems, real compromises on issues like the Muslim Brotherhood, which are clearly, politically, ideologically, even emotionally or personally, very important to Erdogan. And again, there have been continuous hints from Turkey that would like to improve these relationships, but no concrete evidence yet that it's willing to make any of the specific concessions that would require. So again, not having insight into what's happening inside Erdogan's head or inside the palace, I think we'll just keep waiting to see some kind of real concrete gestures that Turkey is willing to try to change the dynamics with these countries.
I think I might chip in just very shortly, because Soner and Nick already said what is supposed to be said, but I think we should underline the issue of credibility of all these resets of Turkey, because especially since the Biden administration took office, we are seeing an attempt to improving ties with many allies in the region and beyond the region, but we don't have, as Nick said, necessary proof on steps being taken for these resets. This is very important, and I think for the issue of Syrian refugees, well, even if they don't have this status of refugees because they are guests in Turkey still, it is an important bargaining chip for Turkey when it comes to its relationship with the EU. Because I think having the largest refugee community in the world, hosting the largest refugee community in the world, is a valuable asset for Turkey when it comes to Turkey-EU relations. And it is, as I said, if we are going to see an improvement on Turkey-EU relations, the only area that I can see that there might be one is the renewal of Turkey-EU statement on refugees, which is clearly not necessarily a positive development for everyone, but I thought it is relevant for a panel on Turkey, Greece, and the US. I think I will stop there.
Thank you, İlke. I have two more questions here that's related to this dimension of Mediterranean and regional politics. They are both addressed to Soner, but if other panelists also want to chip in, please feel free. The first question is by Galia Lindenstrauss. You used the term win on Turkish aspirations with regard to the Libyan civil war. Isn't the current stalemate better in light of the high price of crossing the Egyptian red line in Libya, if indeed there will be an attempt to win the war? And the second question is, do you mind if I just, or if you want?
No, please go ahead.
And the second one is very short. How the Americans, this is from Mohammed Al-Mirzan, how do the Americans view Turkish military interventions in many places, and do they support Turkey on this matter or not? I'll let you answer.
Absolutely. Let me do the Libya and then the US view of Turkish interventions. I'm sure Nick can tackle that as well. Look, I don't think when I use the word win in Libya, I don't think win for Turkey is having Tripoli take all of Libya back. I think, win for Libya, Turkey and Libya was making sure that Tripoli would not fall, and Ankara succeeded in achieving that goal, because Tripoli was on the cusp of falling into the hands of forces backed by led by General Haftar. The first thing Haftar would have done had he taken Tripoli is he would have ripped up that treaty that Turkey and Libya's government in Tripoli had signed, which declared Turkey and Libya as maritime neighbors. Haftar's main backers militarily were during the civil war. Now we have a stalemate, but when the war was on, his main military backers were Egypt, UAE, and France. He had political backing from Greece. So it was obvious that none of these countries would love to see Ankara succeed. And so I think if Tripoli had fallen, Turkey's treaty with Libya would have been thrown out, and that would have completed this axis, as Ankara sees it, forming around Turkey and blocking the country in, with Libya also coming on board. So Ankara's intervention prevented that eventuality. But as in Syria, another area where Turkey intervened and won in quotes, military wins don't always translate into complete political wins for Turkey. In Syria, a Turkish intervention pushed the Kurdish YPG, which is an offshoot of PKK, away from the Turkish border. But Turkey did not fill in this void. Russia and Assad regime filled in the void. And in Libya, yes, Turkey prevented Tripoli from falling, but of course, it came at the expense of Russia coming in and taking over the lead of forces opposing Tripoli, and also led by Haftar. So Libya became another area where Turkey now has to deal with Russia. What is the US view? It depends on which administration. I guess in the current administration, I think the Middle East is not what it used to be. Part of the reason why this pivot I described earlier, how the US is pivoting very slowly at the speed of an oil tanker on the Bosphorus from Turkey to Greece, but the US is also pivoting from the Middle East to the Pacific Ocean towards China. So the gravitational weight of Turkey and Greece are both decreasing. And I know everybody on this call is keeping a mental tab of which leaders Biden and Blinken have called so far. Neither Greek nor Turkish leaders have received calls, unless it happened in the last few days. I was away, I wasn't following, but it's a sign that neither of these countries have the same gravitational weight for US policy as it used to be the case, because the overall importance of the Middle East, I think, for the administration is decreasing. But I want to add one more thing before we turn over. I do want to hear from Nick and others. On the Greek side, I'm fascinated by Athens' ability to capture this opportunity, right? So Turkey is not viewed as a reliable ally by Washington anymore. And Greece has reinvented itself. I think I tweeted earlier and said, Greece is the new Turkey as far as Washington is concerned. And I'm equally fascinated that Greece kind of repositioned itself to become a key ally for the US and a key building block of American security architecture regarding an Eastern Med, not under a right-wing prime minister, but under its first communist source prime minister, or leftist, whatever you call Tsipras. It's fascinating that Tsipras made Greece America's best ally. Not many people thought this is what he would have delivered. So I'm equally fascinated by, I think Greece's diplomats should be credited, of course, by taking this opportunity and filling in the void left behind by Turkey.
Thank you, Soner. İlke and Nick, do you have anything do you mind if you could keep it short, because we still have a couple of more questions?
If you want, you can get all the questions and then we can answer in one round.
Okay, if you're happy with that. So I have 3 very different questions. So for the pick whichever you like. One of them is on by Fevzi Hussein on the back of International Women's Day. In terms of the failed CEFTUS problem, for the last 60 years, negotiations have been 100% male-led, and we still have deadlock. Is it time to bring the Cypriot women in and ditch the Cypriot testosterone? Love that question. The other question is specifically for Soner, but again, I think it might be relevant to you as well. It's about the new administration's, the US administration's policies in relation to Turkey's, in relation to its foreign policy to Turkey. To what extent can the US detach itself from its ally? And given that the material ties have been developed since 1950s, you draw on this question. If you have anything else to add, feel free. It seems like a bit of a more historical question as well, might be interesting to look into. Can the second question, in addition to this one, this is Anthony Derisotis, both questions. Can Greece actually replace Turkey's role for US interests in the region, bearing in mind that Turkey is a link to the Caucasus and to Central Asia, where Greece has no influence? And final set of questions. Again, there's a theme here by Ramazan Tunç in relation to the Kurdish issue. Soner, you already talked about this a little bit, but what is the weight and impacts of anti-Kurdish stance of Turkey in shaping of the foreign policy after Trump? Is Turkey going to carry on destabilizing power in Syria after the failure of the equip and train program of jihadists? Is the main stance is a redentism of anti-Kurdish sentiment for Syria and building new alliances? So a question around Kurdish politics in the region and Turkey's Kurdish politics and the impact on the US, I suppose. I know some of the things that you already covered are, will be partly answering these questions, but anything else you would like to add, please go ahead.
Should I quickly go ahead, or was İlke going to go ahead? I was confused.
Let's start with the gender question. Who would like to go with that one?
I can take that one.
And I saw a smile on his face as well, so maybe he also have some points. Go ahead, İlke.
I also liked very much that question. Actually, thank you very much, Fevzi, for posing that. My answer is definitely. I think including women in every process of mediation could increase the quality of mediation and problem solving in any conflict. There is no doubt on that. But I think Cyprus issue is very rooted, very historical, and as I have already said in the beginning of my intervention, I don't know if anyone has incentives to solve that right now. So even if the idea is great, I'm not so sure even if women are on board that they should be, that will be a key to the solution. On foreign policy of Turkey and the questions on could Greece replace Turkey, for me, I'm sure Soner and Nick can also contribute to that, but the intention is not necessarily replacing. The intention is backing up. And while backing up and being ready for the worst with Turkey, making things better with Greece have also other advantages. This is what I wanted to comment in my intervention, because I think even if the US's foreign policy is going to be mostly centralizing on China, one of the most important aspects of the competition with China will also be great power, what we call great power competition over different regions. And the Balkans is one of them. The other, we can also even name the question in the Eastern Mediterranean as one of them. So this is not just necessarily pivoting towards Greece to replace Turkey as an ally, but also kind of scoring points against Russia and China for in a concrete region. So I think the pivot towards Greece, if we can agree to name it a pivot, should be pursued in with broader lenses, not just on Turkey-US relations, but also including other dimensions of US foreign policy for the years to come. I think I can stop there and not get more time from Soner and Nick here. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, İlke. And I'll quickly jump in, and I hope Nick can come in as well. On the Greece, can Greece substitute Turkey? I agree with İlke. I think Greece's strategic depth is not quite as big as Turkey's. Turkey is also a Caucasus country. It's a Middle Eastern country, not just Levant, but the broader Middle East. So yes, there are things that Turkey can do that Greece can't because of its geography, but also I think notwithstanding its deep societal polarization under President Erdogan, Turkey still has very strong institutions, the military being one of them. The earlier question about US view of Turkish military interventions, I think there's also some surprise that notwithstanding the many limitations that it has very few neighbors that it likes it, Turkey has succeeded in these wars, not at least in the sense of getting its military objectives accomplished in Syria, in Libya, in South Caucasus. Its drone campaign has been quite effective. And so the military capabilities of Turkey I think are quite superb. And so that's why I use the analogy of an oil tanker turning in the open seas to say that this pivot may never reach completion. We're just observing it take place. Maybe the ship will not completely turn from Turkey to Greece. Maybe it will stand halfway, right? Stop in the middle and set a new course. I do think, therefore, that Washington is going very slowly in this pivot. But it doesn't mean that US-Turkish relationship is coming back. I think there are structural issues. Turkey's purchase of Russian-made S-400 missile defense system, as a result of which Turkey is being sanctioned by US Congress and also kicked out of the F-35 fighter plane project. This is NATO's next generation fighter plane project. And these fighter plane projects are usually 3-4 decade projects, which means if Turkey is cut out of this project, US-Turkish defense ties will not have the kind of cement that tie Turkey and US together for the next 3 decades. Now, Turkey has only been suspended from this project. It's not been ejected formally, so it could come back. Again, maybe Washington is going very slowly. But again, I don't think we're going to see a restoration of US-Turkish ties or even a reset. That has a lot to do with evolving ties between Turkish President Erdogan and Russian President Putin. It's not an accident that Putin was the first leader to reach out to Erdogan after the failed coup in 2016. I think a lot of Turkey's Western allies, unfortunately, at the time were sitting on their hands. They should have reached out to Turkey. But it's also not an accident that Erdogan committed to buy this missile defense system after Putin reached out to him. I get the sense that this is the price of Erdogan-Putin relationship, and Erdogan will not change his mind regarding this purchase. And so the US S-400 issue will remain a constant problem in US-Turkish ties. So even if we were to see that Washington and Ankara find common ground on issues such as Libya and Syria, it will US-Turkish relationship, I think at this stage, the way I called it, I think I tweeted this morning, I said it has moved to the phase of open relationship. The two sides are free to see other people. There's no divorce yet, but it is an open relationship.
All right, I'll try to just make a few quick comments on all those questions. First, I enjoyed Soner pointing this out. Right, it's ironic that it was the Greek left that finally improved relations with the United States. It would also be ironic if it was the Turkish right that lived out the left's long-term dream of closing Incirlik and withdrawing from NATO. We'll see what happens. How does the US view Turkish interventions in the region? In a word, badly. I think, and here's what, I mean, the part of the problem is that as the US tries to pivot from the Middle East, as Soner said, that means there's less just focus and interest in the region as a whole. But the flip side of that is I think there'll be more frustration with countries that are seen as destabilizing the Middle East and countries that are seen as making it hard for the United States to leave. I mean, the pattern is that Obama, Trump, everyone wanted to leave the Middle East. The Middle East kept dragging them back in. And again, if Turkey is seen as being one of the countries through its interventions that requires the US to keep paying attention to the region, that could be a source of added tension. It is very much true, as İlke said, that no one wants to lose Turkey. No one thinks Greece can replace Turkey. But I fear increasingly the attitude is, this isn't the United States' call anymore. The ball's in Ankara's court. And if Turkey has decided to downgrade or end or change the relationship, from the US's point of view, it's simply a matter of taking precautions. It's finding other alternatives for air bases, other alternatives for partners. And that, again, does become a self-perpetuating dynamic. The Egypt thing is also interesting to see how this plays out. And I'm sure there are people on the call following this much more closely than I am. Indeed, Turkey won a major victory by supporting the Tripoli government and preventing them from falling to Haftar's forces. it seems like after that was clear, Egypt somewhat pivoted and decided that if it couldn't conquer Tripoli, its best route to minimize Turkish influence in the region was by overseeing a reconciliation process between Tripoli and Haftar, which, again, I don't think anyone's holding its breath, but this seems to have been going better than many people anticipated. And I think the open question is how Turkey will respond to that diplomatic initiative. And if it can use that to consolidate its power via Tripoli, or if it ultimately sees Egypt's leadership of this rapprochement as a threat. And much as I think if Haftar had taken over Tripoli, exactly, he would have torn up the maritime deal immediately. There's also a question how a joint Libyan government that's not as under Turkey's sway as Tripoli was would handle this agreement. I think it's also very unlikely that any kind of national unity government in the long run is going to preserve Turkey's memorandum. So I think that will pose new challenges for Turkey, which we'll see how militarily or diplomatically they try to handle them. I'm sure I had more to say, but I'll stop there.
Thanks, Nick. Anyone else about the question on women in negotiations or the history or Greece's? I think you extensively talk about whether Greece can be replaced, Turkey can be replaced by Greece. That's very obvious. Any comments on the Kurdish question? If you like, I can remind you the questions.
Yes, please.
I didn't know what you were. Okay, all right. So the anti-Kurdish stance of Turkey and how is this shaping the U.S. foreign policy after Trump? And how will this affect Turkey's policy as well? Will it continue to destabilize power in Syria? So yeah. Basically, is the main stance is irredentism of anti-Kurdish sentiment for Syria and building new alliances.
I'll just say, I think looking at it from the Washington angle, and I think also the Brussels angle, part of what's made this so many of us pessimistic is that it seems like of Turkey's regional interventions, when you look at polls of how popular they are domestically, and as İlke said, a lot of this does have a big domestic component to it. The specific overseas interventions that seem most problematic from the point of view of Brussels and Washington are the ones that seem to have the most support in Turkey, and some of the issues or foreign policy disputes that where the U.S. could see eye to eye with Turkey are ones that actually end up having the least support domestically in Turkey. So the confrontation with Greece, Erdogan's position on that always seems to poll well. Obviously taking on the United States over the YPG in Syria is something that's been popular across the board in Turkey. Whereas Turkey's position in Idlib, or even to an extent in Libya, where there is some common cause with Washington, those positions have actually been more controversial, again, based on polls, it seems, in Turkey itself. So.
Thank you. Okay, great.
Okay. No, it's okay. If you want us to chip in also to this question, I can quickly say one comment on this. I think, yes, Kurdish problem plays an important role in definition of Turkish foreign policy. As I said, the domestic dimension is very important, but I should also underline that this is also one of the important issues on Turkey-US agenda, actually. I think if Halkbank case is the most important one or most urgent one right now for Turkey. Maybe S-400s and the future of their collaboration with the Syrian Kurds are the two in the US agenda. I'm sure Nick and Sonay could chip in there as well. So yes, clearly the Kurdish issue, both domestically and also internationally, will be an important item on the agenda also during the Biden administration's term. I just wanted to say that.
And I know we don't have a lot of time, so very briefly, I just want to add that I think human rights will be a really significant part of Biden's agenda towards Turkey, not the usual lip service, but real commitment to human rights, and not for reasons to do with Turkey, but for reasons to do with the US. After what transpired in Washington on January 6th, I think the Biden administration will strongly underscore its commitment to democracy and human rights in Turkey as a way of restoring faith in democracy in the United States. So it'll be harder for Biden to give Erdogan a whole pass on democracy and human rights, just because there is a domestic implication of that kind of an underscoring of commitment to democracy in Turkey for reasons to do with US politics. And I think there'll be, the way I see it, there'll be three legs or tripods of Biden policy towards Turkey. One is managing differences, including those that have to do or are driven by Russia. S-400 and Kurdish issue is going to be one of them. Definitely the YPG, US ties with YPG, that is an offshoot of PKK. I think that's going to be, I would say, managing that is aspiration for Washington. Broadening areas of cooperation, Libya, perhaps, South Caucasus, Ukraine, Crimea. I don't think Erdogan and Putin are good friends. I guess friends is not a right word. They have a relationship. Turkey and Russia are not allies. They have many differences. Cyprus is one of them. Ukraine and Russia's annexation of Crimea is another one. So that's an area of cooperation. And third is a really strong commitment to human rights and beyond lip service. I think that the Biden, I would guess that Biden will call Erdogan. Number one, the day he calls Greek Prime Minister, I think Athens and Ankara will get calls on the same day. But also, I think this call will happen only Erdogan makes a major delivery on human rights front. Releasing, for example, Osman Kavala or a philanthropist in jail or someone like that. So it's ironic because we're discussing Turkish-Greek ties. But I guess the Biden-Mitsotakis call will happen during the day or around the week of the Erdogan-Biden call, and that will only happen after Erdogan delivers on the democracy and human rights front. So even when you try to separate Greece and Turkey, it looks like it's impossible to do so.
Thank you, Soner, for that.
I'm just joking. I hope that the joke was translated over a Zoom call.
Thank you. That's actually a great place to end, with a joke and with such a big picture comment on the US administration's overview of the situation. So great final finishing remark. Thank you, Soner. We started with you and finishing with you, I suppose. So it was like a crash course on Turkey-Greece relations and many other things in Mediterranean politics. US, it was brilliant analysis from great scholars and analysts. So it's great to, we don't get these types of analysis easily in other platforms. So I feel very lucky personally, and I personally learned a lot. Thank you so much for your time and for your insights and for answering the questions. And thank you also to the audience for brilliant questions as well. And thank you to CEFTUS for organizing this event and bringing us together. So I think there will be, Buse will probably ask me again to remind the picture, the screenshot. If you would like to take part, please turn on your cameras. If otherwise, turn off your cameras. So to end here, thank you very much, everyone, and have a great evening. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.